Hello, you're watching Initiative Africa. My name is Asha Samput. Welcome to your weekly magazine featuring Africa on the move through smart innovations and initiatives that work. Today, we're exploring the vibrant world of African storytelling through art as we discover how a new generation of artists is using illustrations and comics to shape narratives and preserve our cultural heritage. With our special guest, Annick, Kamgang will explore how art becomes a powerful tool for social change and political expression. Well, it's time for Initiative Africa. Let's get on with the show with our top stories today. Drawing, illustrating, explaining, storytelling, daring to critique. This is Annick Kamgang's mission. This French Cameroonian artist devoted to pencil strokes and the power of words grew up inspired by her father's political opposition. This has fueled a lifetime of artistic and activist inspiration. Cam, her pen name, she's our guest today.
Je suis artiviste.
I'm an artivist, so I'm an artist and an activist because I use drawing as a weapon, if you see what I mean.
Entre guillemets.
Combining brushstrokes, traditions and training while nurturing new talents. An essential mission for a holiday painting workshop organized in the Republic of Congo.
Drawing has been part of my life since childhood. I've been drawing since I was 6 years old. It's here that I learned how to paint. I find it fascinating, and I've learned so many things, and I continue to learn.
Meeting French Cameroonian Alliance, who oversees the development of African comics from Conakry, much to the delight of fans across the continent.
It is a great opportunity to highlight the talent of African authors, so it is a pride for us all that this exhibition is finally taking place.
In the Republic of Congo, art schools are almost non-existent, yet engaging the public in art and discovering talents for cultural heritage preservation is an essential task. This mission has been taken up by a holiday painting workshop for children under 17, organized for several years by the African Circle Museum. It aims not only to occupy children during holidays, but also to awaken their passions and potentially inspire artistic vocations. Here's a report by Brice Kinhu in Pointe-Noire.
At the heart of Pointe-Noire's African Circle Museum, an annual painting workshop brings together children aged 6 to 16. For 3 months during holidays, young hands learn to master brushes and colors. This program goes beyond teaching painting techniques. It's a cultural transmission, encouraging children to draw inspiration from local imagery, traditional motifs and regional landscapes from their region. While some participants were already experiencing drawing from home, others discovered the art form for the first time, motivated by the aspiration to create original works.
Drawing has been part of my life since childhood. I've been drawing since I was 6 years old. It's here that I learned how to paint. I find it fascinating, and I've learned so many things, and I continue to learn.
When I first arrived here, the teacher told me, draw what's in your mind. I drew fish. Before, I wasn't very good at drawing fish. But then I improved and was able to draw beautiful fish that I painted myself. The teacher just added a few finishing touches to enhance the painting.
Children emerge from this initiative transformed, equipped with new skills. Mentors, including Congolese painter Guillaume Makani, express satisfaction with the children's artistic development and their creations. They plan to provide continued mentorship to several promising students who have caught their attention, while also advocating for local authorities to establish an art school that could help uncover hidden talents.
If one day, truly, we could realize this idea of opening an art school here in Pointe-Noire, it would be wonderful. There are many children who draw well, even in neighborhoods who don't make it here to the African Circle Museum, but they draw well. If we could mentor them and encourage them further, we would really have many painters in our country.
Parents, recognizing the importance of this learning experience, play a crucial role in this journey. At the end of the 3-month workshop, the children's artwork is presented to parents during a certificate ceremony. Some parents even express amazement at their children's rapid progress.
At first, I didn't expect what I saw today. I didn't know it would be like this. But ultimately, I would say this is a serious program. It went really well. My child and all the children presented their paintings and drawings. We saw all the artwork they created. And it's amazing. It's truly beautiful. It's wonderful that children can express themselves this way. During these 3 months of training, I observed how this workshop awakened in my child this passion they had for art. They discovered a genuine love for art. They even made a video to tell me, "Mom, it was a great idea to enroll me." I've also seen how my child has progressed step by step. And now, I am fulfilled. I am delighted to see my child's creations.
The workshop organizers believe that this type of initiative can strengthen intergenerational bonds and enable children to connect with their cultural heritage while developing their creativity.
We teach them to paint, to practice what begins as merely entertainment but could become a profession tomorrow. The training isn't limited to just having children hold brushes and paint. In fact, they start with pencil drawing. Only afterward do they paint on canvas with brushes, but it doesn't stop there. We also provide them with guidance about the importance of painting.
By providing children with tools for self-expression, the African Circle Museum plays a vital role in preserving local culture while planting the seeds for a future generation of artists. These young people, armed with brushes and dreams, could well become the voices of a new artistic wave, preserving heritage and writing a new chapter in the Republic of Congo's art history.
When we talk about comics in Africa, we immediately think of Cam, or Annick Kamgang. This Paris-based illustrator worked in the press at Jeune Afrique before discovering the appeal of documentary comics. She's the co-author of Lucha, Chronicle of a Weaponless Revolution in Congo. It's a story about civic engagement close to a theme dear to her heart, human rights and political opposition in Africa. She spoke with Laurent Soustras and Thierry Schiller.
Annick Kamgang, hello. It's rare, but we don't know where to start with you. You define yourself as an artist, and activist. So what are your means of expression?
Yes, I'm an artivist, so I'm an artist and an activist, because I use drawing as a weapon, if you see what I mean. I have 3 means of expression. The first is press cartoons. I express my opinions and my political ideas through the impertinent medium of press cartoons, which includes caricature or irony to comment on current events and criticize those who govern us, for example. My second means of expression, my second weapon for expressing my ideas, is comics. There's a continuity with press cartoons. Press cartoons are between art, journalism and comics, especially comics reporting. Or between comics and journalism, I tell a story. The story of Lucha, a group of young Congolese civil society activists who fight for human rights in Goma, in Congo. I tell their story, commitment and peaceful struggle in a challenging environment, the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. This is my second way of expressing myself, and the third way is through illustration. Illustration is a drawing, an idea, and often an illustration is done for NGOs that fight for human rights in Africa. It's often about Africa and the human rights and political issues in Africa and the African diaspora.
When you talk about your life journey, you mention a childhood spent in some specific conditions, and you also mention your father's convictions. Is this what determined your vocation?
Oui, tout à fait. Mon intérêt pour la politique.
Yes, that's right. My interest in politics and desire to express my political ideas through drawing comes from a childhood spent in the 80s in Central Africa. I was born in Yaoundé and spent my childhood in the 80s in Bangui. As a child, I knew that we were in a country where we couldn't say whatever we wanted, and especially about the president.
On ne pouvait pas dire tout ce qu'on voulait, sur tout ce qu'on voulait, et notamment sur le président. Et j'avais un père qui s'intéressait toujours à la politique.
I had a father who was always interested in politics, and I remember when I was a child when there was Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso. I also remember when Nelson Mandela came out of prison. I remember that. We watched that on TV. So I had a father who was very interested in that. A decisive year in my life, the years 90 and 91, it was a year that marked me because my life changed.
Ce sont 2 années qui correspondent à...
These 2 years corresponded to movements of people in the French-speaking Central Africa and West Africa who demanded more freedom of expression and a multi-party system because there was only one political party at the time. There were movements, riots, and in particular there were the dead cities, but also in Bangui, where I was. It was at a time that my father became politicized. He was a Cameroonian civil servant in an international organization in Bangui. He became political. He published an article in which he said that it was normal for African people to ask for a multi-party system, and his superiors came down on him, asking him to explain himself. He was a civil servant. In fact, he was bound by the duty of reserve.
Lui demande des explications. Et lui, en fait, il était fonctionnaire et en fait, il était tenu à ce qu'on appelle le devoir de réserve. Il disait qu'il n'avait pas trop le droit de s'exprimer.
He said he did not have the right to express himself, but he stood by what he said.
Et là, il bascule, il rentre au Cameroun et il devient opposant.
Then he changed. He returned to Cameroon and became a political opponent. So that marked me, and I think that explains my interest in political subjects.
Les sujets politiques. Les sujets relatifs
subjects related to freedom of expression and human rights. So that was decisive. Yeah, very decisive.
Ça a été décisif.
What about drawing? You have always drawn. Do you remember your first drawings? And what did the training in Paris bring to you?
Alors, enfant, dans les années 80, je dessinais...
So as a child in the 80s, I used to draw. I remember in kindergarten, I won a drawing competition. We had to enter a contest where we had to draw flight attendants from the Air Afrique company. I won. I was very happy. That's one of the first drawings I remember because I had won a competition. I continued, and on the other hand, I drew a lot of images that I saw in newspapers and catalogues and fashion magazines.
Voilà les catalogues de mode, voilà. Donc, mais rien à voir avec la politique.
So nothing to do with politics, and later on, political drawing came about through this story from the 90s.
Des années 90 qui m'a marqué, et j'ai suivi effectivement.
Which marked me, and I did indeed follow training courses. When I started political drawing professionally, I was already living in Paris and took evening classes for adults.
Et ce que m'ont apporté ces formations, c'est à la fois déjà...
These courses brought me contacts in a small network in the illustration field.
De l'illustration. Ça m'a aussi dit, bon, je suis pas totalement...
It also told me, well, I'm not an imposter in this field because I also have the training.
Donc ça m'a aidé à prendre confiance en moi. Et ça m'a apporté des connaissances.
So it helped me gain confidence in myself, gave me technical knowledge to draw with softwares, etc. It also gave me a general artistic culture.
Une culture générale artistique.
Afterwards, the political culture, as I'm into political drawings, linked to what I read in the news. It's the fact that I try as much as possible to follow current events.
De suivre l'actualité.
Are you seeking to boost your business in Africa and Europe? Increase your visibility with Business Frequency thanks to our network of national television channels in more than 40 countries. Every week, more than 100 broadcasts across Africa, the Indian Ocean and Europe. Don't miss this unique opportunity. Contact us now and put your brand into the spotlight.
Welcome to the second part of our show. We'll return to our guest Annick Kamgang, but first I'm taking you to meet another great African woman of illustration. Indeed, it's impossible to talk about African comics without mentioning Joëlle Épée-Madingué. Known as Eliance, she has established herself as one of the continent's finest artists. She also contributes to promoting the identity of the continent's comics, notably through the Bilili Festival she created in the Republic of Congo. Our correspondent Sayon Koma met her in Conakry. Watch.
This is not a trivial smile. It's the smile of a genuine comics fan, thrilled to be part of this private opening in the Guinean capital. For Oscar, it is a long-cherished dream to revisit the history of African comics that has finally come true.
It is a great opportunity to highlight the talent of African authors, so it is a pride for us all that this exhibition is finally taking place.
This private viewing in Conakry is in fact the Cubini exhibition of comics from Africa traveling through the network of French institutes around the world.
I have learnt a lot. The exhibition truly highlights the evolution of comics, yesterday, today and tomorrow. It's very interesting to see the history and the whole evolution story.
This incredible exploration of African comics, and undoubtedly the most remarkable, is co-organized by the author Joëlle Épée-Madingué. The Franco-Cameroonian is the co-creator of this exhibition in collaboration with the Cité Internationale de la Bande Dessinée et de l'Image in Angoulême, France.
Alors, pourquoi Afrique.s?
So why Africa's? Because with my co-curator, we really wanted to remind people that Africa is not a village.
Donc ça veut dire qu'il ne faut pas s'attendre à une
This means that we should not expect a homogeneity of features, subjects, characters, and even in the characters' appearances, we wanted to show that Africa's refer to several Africa. So we wanted to write Africa's with a .s. instead of Africa or Africa in the singular form.
This event is only one of the projects of this African comic book author. Born in Bafoussam in her native Cameroon, Joëlle is considered one of the torchbearers of the ninth art on the continent. The Cameroonian's rich career began as the author of the comic strip La Vie de Ben Douta, or Life of Ben Douta, a comic book that propelled the young career of Eliance, her nickname. And today, the adventure continues 8 years after the first volume was published.
Pour l'instant, il y a 3 tomes, donc il y a le tome 1.
For now, there are 3 volumes, volumes 1, 2 and 3. I'm working on volume 4. It's inspired by my own life as a student.
And thanks to the experience gained from Eben Douta's life, Joëlle is now involved in promoting African comics. Festival director and co-creator of various temporary comic books exhibitions on the continent, Eliance wears several hats, including the organization of the most prestigious comic book exhibition in Africa, Bilili BD or Bilili Comics.
C'est vraiment un festival créé pour réseauter.
It is a festival created for authors to network and mix diverse profiles and talents, Cameroonians, Togolese, Senegalese and Europeans.
Sénégalais, des Européens.
A networking gathering which has enabled Joëlle Épée-Madingué to identify new business opportunities. Eliance draws for magazines and comics collectives in several countries, but she also creates for individuals and institutions, for festivals as well as for comic workshops around the world. A proof that the African ninth art is in full swing.
La BD africaine a de l'avenir.
African comics definitely has a future.
Définitivement. Et j'ai même envie de dire au-delà du fait.
And beyond the fact that it has a future, it is a bright one.
Dans son avenir.
As Joëlle plays the ambassador of African comics, she's today present in several African capitals and continues to write her story. Between the preparation of the 7th edition of the Bilili Festival in Congo and the conception of the 4th volume of the life of Eben Douta, the festival director wants to continue to put stars in the eyes of comics book lovers.
We now return to illustrator and activist Annick Kamgang as she unveils her new comic project about Cameroon's independence struggle in the 60s, which is about to be published. Let's listen to her.
Annick Kamgang, you're known from your comics book La Lucha, the youth movement in the DRC. How did you conceive this work and what does it mean to you?
Alors, je vais d'abord répondre à la deuxième question.
So I'll try the second question first. It's the first time, my first publication, and also the first in my career. It's essential. It's the first time I've done a comic book.
C'est la première fois que je fais une bande dessinée. Alors comment
So how then? The genesis of the Lucha project, chronicle of an unnamed revolution in Congo.
Cette bande dessinée raconte une histoire.
This comic strip tells a story about a group that fights for human rights in the DRC. I also met Justine Brabant, who had already written about the DRC.
Elle avait écrit un sujet sur
She had written a story about military groups in the east of the DRC who are committing crimes with impunity.
Voilà, et qui commettent des crimes en toute impunité. Et quand je lui ai parlé...
When I told her about this group, Lucha, who are fighting for human rights in the DRC and who are fighting peacefully in a violent environment, she said, "Oh yes, really, I really wanted to do this because I have seen this region marked by this violence for more than 20 years.
Depuis plus d'une vingtaine d'années.
And when I look at what they are doing, these young people from Lucha, gives me hope to see this audacity to lead a non-violent and peaceful struggle in such a violent environment."
Mais on n'a pas trouvé un
We couldn't find a newspaper or an African news media that wanted to talk about Lucha in comics daily every week because it was a very difficult election year in 2016.
Parce que c'était vraiment une année 2016 électorale très difficile. Et au final, on a sorti ce livre-là.
In the end, we released this book in 2018, 2 years after the election year.
L'année électorale. Bon, mais ce qui est bien, c'est que le journal...
But the good thing is that the newspaper Jeune Afrique at the time published the entire comic book on its online media. So that's how the project came about.
C'est comme ça donc que le projet s'est fait. You said that press illustration was a sprint and comics a marathon.
Oui.
Which exercise do you tend to do more naturally today?
Vers le marathon. Le travail de longue
Towards the marathon, the long-term work specific to comics is to go into a subject in depth, gather as much written and visual documentation as possible, archives, and sit down and write.
Mais aussi visuel, et aussi des archives. Et de se poser
That's what I'm leaning towards more today.
Vers quoi je tends davantage aujourd'hui?
Do your projects include a comic book project?
Oui.
A comic book project about Cameroon, the country of your father, where you were also born? Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Oui, bien sûr. Alors ça, c'est un projet de longue année.
Yes, of course. So that's a long-term project. It's really a marathon that started in 2020 and it's not yet completely finished because I'm looking for a publisher.
Un éditeur. C'est un projet qui vient de ma volonté.
It's a project that comes from my desire to understand the reasons why in the 90s, when movements were demanding more freedom in Central Africa,
il y avait des mouvements qui demandaient davantage de liberté en Afrique centrale. Ces années-là où en fait mon père devient opposant.
My father became an opponent and my life was turned upside down and he sent us into exile. I'm of Guadeloupean origin, so we were sent into exile, my mother, myself and my brothers and sisters in Guadeloupe at that time. Afterwards, I didn't see my father again for more than 20 years. And I always wondered why he became a political opponent then. He had the possibility to go into exile with us and to leave, but he didn't. So I always wondered where this patriotism and this visceral attachment to his country and to the liberation of his country came from.
Et c'est là que j'ai découvert une histoire que je ne connaissais pas bien.
That's when I discovered a story that I didn't know very well by doing some research, by trying to understand my father's choices. I learned that in Cameroon's 50s, 60s and 60s,
60, 70, Donc il y a une lutte de libération.
There was a liberation struggle for the country's independence, led by a movement called the UPC, the Union of Peoples of Cameroon.
Et j'ai aussi découvert.
I also discovered that this history remained taboo in Cameroon for many, many years.
Tabou au Cameroun pendant de très très longues années. Et donc j'ai décidé.
I decided, when I discovered this story, to make a graphic novel of it.
Un roman graphique.
Unfortunately, the year I started this project in 2020, my father passed away. He was an integral part of the project, but he died. But I still decided to go through with the project and tell that story.
Et donc, la baie des reportages africains.
For you, African comics reporting is also a way of getting people to question the past, the present, and perhaps even the future?
Le présent et peut-être même l'avenir.
Oui, tout à fait. Ce qui est assez bien avec la bande dessinée.
Yes, that's right. What's great about comics reporting is that we think of a childish universe when we think of comics.
Un univers enfantin, etc. Mais vous avez dans les années 90...
But in the 90s, and this is what marked me for comics, you have the emergence of what is called a graphic novel, with, for example, a French publishing house like the Association, and a comic book which really marked me, called Persepolis, whose author is Marjane Satrapi.
Dont l'autrice est Marjane Satrapi, et en fait qui parle de son enfance.
And who in fact talks about her childhood in Iran, and who, through her family history, her journey talks about Iran.
De l'Iran. Ce que je trouve intéressant, c'est de mêler à la fois...
What I find interesting is to mix what comics allow, a topical political subject and a personal and family story. That's what comics and graphic novels allow.
Personnelle et familiale. Voilà. C'est ce que permet aussi la bande dessinée, le roman graphique. Et je trouve que, pour le coup, l'actualité africaine...
I find that for the time being, current African affairs and political topics and subjects also related to African human rights have entirely their place in this kind of comic strip.
Ce genre de BD qu'on appelle la bande dessinée reportage.
Well, that's all for Initiative Africa today. You can find Annick's Kamgang's interview and all our shows on our website, africanair.com. And of course, don't hesitate to follow us on our social networks and share, like, and comment using the hashtag Initiative Africa. And don't forget, next week, same time, same channel, I'll see you with Business Africa. Have a great week, everyone. And until next time, goodbye.